Welcome to Smart Communication. Salim Mahmoudi, you asked that we speak about communications today. Thank you for the question that you sent into the channel. So today we're going to talk about smart communications. When you communicate, it's important, whether you be a project manager, coordinator, team member, it's important that you make your communication smart. What does smart mean? Smart typically would mean specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timeframes. But I've put a spin on that for communications. When you communicate, the S needs to be specific, quite all right. You need to make your communications pinpoint precise. You need to leave absolutely no room for misconstruing what you truly mean. So you got to make your communications specific. You got to make your communications meaningful. In other words, what you're saying makes sense, and what you're saying is relevant to the issue at hand or relevant to the individual you're communicating with. It must be within the context that you're trying to communicate. Your communication must be appropriate. It must not only make sense, but it should be tailored to the audience. It shouldn't use jargon that the person isn't familiar with, and it shouldn't be unprofessional. It should be appropriate to the individual you're communicating with, and it should also be congruent with who you are and who you're trying to portray, which takes us to R. It should be respectful. When you communicate with people, don't talk down to them, don't talk at them, but talk with them in conversation. Conversing with an individual, listening to what they have to say, and you sharing your point of view and them sharing their point of view, but it should be done in a respectful manner. Last but not least, you want to keep it brief, keep it simple, keep it time-bound, because time is money. And communicating for 2 hours when you could communicate in 2 minutes is just unacceptable. So we need to make our communication as professional, specific, meaningful, appropriate, respectful, and time-bound. Now let's talk about communications basics. Communications is a transfer of a message, an idea, emotion, feeling, or something else that is both received and understood. Only when the message is received and understood is there truly communication. Now, all manner of communication follows this model I'm about to show you. Communication is a collection of processes within several components. These components are sender, the originator or source of the message; receiver, the person for whom the message is intended; message, the information or idea, feeling to be conveyed; and medium, the vehicle used to convey the message. So all communication follows a basic model of sender-receiver. It starts off with the sender having an idea. That idea needs to be encoded. We translate that idea from an idea into words. We put it into a meaningful language. And that meaningful language, when we do that, we say we have encoded the message. The message is then sent through the medium. However, the message could encounter noise. These are known as barriers or blockers, communication impedance. It is important that when you are crafting the message, when you are encoding, you encode the message in such a way that it will pass through the medium with the minimum, bare minimum noise affecting it. If you know what noise is that could affect the message, then you need to encode it in such a way that it will pass right through the medium without obstruction, or with as little obstruction as possible, so that when it gets to the receiver will hear the message and decode the message, translate what has been said into an idea, and that idea registers, and then the receiver encodes a feedback message to a firm understanding. Again, noise could affect the feedback message, but the sender needs to decode the feedback message to understand what the receiver has said, and the cycle continues. Now, in every sphere of communications, there is, unfortunately, a number of barriers that could affect the message. The sender needs to effectively state the message, as I said, and the receiver needs to listen and accurately perceive the message. But there are several inhibitors, we call them blockers, And the blockers are lack of concentration, interruptions, preconceived ideas, thinking ahead, interference, tuning out, maybe different meanings in what you're communicating. If I say boot, well, maybe you're thinking of a shoe, but I really meant trunk. It really depends on the context. Lack of trust could be a blocker. Information overload, missing information. What about interference on a phone line? Being condescending, maybe poor listening skills, premature judgments, inaccurate assumptions. There are so many possible blockers, but our job as the communicator, as the sender, is to ensure that we properly encode the message in such a way that it would be hard. Someone would need to intentionally misconstrue what you're trying to convey. We need to make our messages that simple. Now, when you're communicating with an audience, it's important that you don't just communicate. It's important that you also connect. And one of the best ways to connect is to actually listen, but not just listening to what is said, actually hearing what is not said. In the words of Peter Drucker, the most important thing in communication is hearing what is not said. How do you know what is not said? Through body language. Professor Emeritus Albert Mehrabian conducted an experiment at UCLA, and he found out that when communicating a heartfelt message where empathy is involved, it is absolutely important that you pay attention to the body language, because the body language in such situations accounts for 55%. The way we say it, 38%. That's the tone of voice. And the words, a mere 7%. Over 90% of the impression that we convey in such sensitive situations actually has nothing to do with what we say. It's how we say it, and it's the body language. 90% of communication is nonverbal. There are body factors, postures and gestures, there are voice inflections, and there's proximity factors. Now let's talk about postures, the way you pose when you are speaking, body poses, facial expressions, gestures, all of that could convey a message. And it's important that you convey the right message. One of the keys to understanding nonverbal cues lies in the concept of congruence. What do we mean by congruence? By congruence, we mean that when you're communicating, what you say and how you say it is congruent. They match. High achievers understand the importance of connecting. High achievers don't only communicate, they connect. And when they speak to people, they're coming from a place of care. They're not coming from a place of just a business. They care about people as well as profits. Average achievers concentrate on production and they forget the people piece. That's why today a lot of people hear about agile and they think it's a waste of time and it's mushy stuff and it's cowboy coding, but they get it wrong. The mushy stuff is important, and low achievers, they're just preoccupied with their own security. You see, high achievers, when they communicate, they view subordinates optimistically. Average achievers, they focus more on their own status. And low achievers, they show a basic distrust for subordinates. Now, you may ask, where's all this information coming from? Well, John Hall, PhD of telemetrics, he conducted a study of the performance of 16,000 executives, and he found there was a direct correlation between achievement and the ability to care for and connect with people. And these are some of his findings. He also found that high achievers seek advice from those under them. Average achievers are reluctant to seek advice from those under them, and low achievers, they don't seek advice. Now, when it comes to communications, high achievers actively listen. Average achievers, they listen only to superiors. And low achievers, it was found, they avoid communication and rely on policy manuals. Now, this is a rather sobering thought that a lot of individuals in business, they see their subordinates as being unworthy, to have a connection of communication. And that is subpar, and it's unfortunate. We who are in the project management world, leadership world, team world, if you're on a team, you need to be aware of these factors. Now, on top of the body factors I just mentioned, we have voice factors. The volume you speak at, the tone, the pitch of voice, the rate of speed, the rate of speech, all of these factor in as to how the message is coming across. We also need to think about proximity factors, where you position yourself when you're communicating. It could be threatening. If you're too close and you're in the individual's personal space, that's a problem. Being far from the individual, it could also mean something. And recent photos showed a well-known leader communicating with his people, and he sat at the far end of the table. Well, it portrayed fear. So we don't want to be too far, but we also don't want to be too close. One of the reasons why people in today's world and in Agile typically subscribe to an open plan, an open office plan, an open office feeling is it promotes communication. And we talk about osmotic communication. And there's so many ways to take up the communication efficiencies of a team. When you're communicating verbally, it's important that you show interest in listening and communicating. Be friendly. A positive, friendly attitude will enhance verbal communication. Smile. Don't hide the smile. A lot of times in business, we forget that we're human and we forget the power of a smile. A smile goes such a long way in opening the gateway of productive communication. Be flexible. Be tactful. Deliver the message at the right time and in the right way. And be courteous. Be mindful of people's time and say thank you. So, in closing, my friends, it's important when you are communicating, when you are asking questions, have in the back of your mind what people are thinking. They're thinking three things. One, do you care for me as you're communicating with me? Two, can you help me? And three, can I trust you? If you're able to make all these three align and you're congruent with your words, your tone of voice, your body language, if you're able to truly drop your defenses while stating your purpose and acknowledging emotions, right? Whatever the case may be, whether you are in a conflict resolution setting, whether you are in a basic everyday team setting, if you're able to phrase questions carefully, my friends, I tell you, you will begin to experience huge improvements. Just drop your defenses, right? Drop any public face and just be you. State your purpose. Be honest about what you're about. Acknowledge emotions. Don't avoid the emotions of others. Don't ignore the emotions of other people. And use open-ended questions when you're asking people how they feel and what they think. You will find a ton of value and improvement. Once upon a time, I wasn't aware of this and I didn't drop defenses. And also, I had a habit of not seeing everyone as an ally. It's important that you see everyone as a potential ally. Teamwork makes the dream work. So if you're on a team, it is absolutely important that you see those on your team as allies, okay? In the words of Jim Rohn, effective communication is 20% what you know and 80% how you feel about what you know. Thank you for joining me today, my friends. Remember, when you communicate, do it smart, specific, meaningful, appropriate, respectful, and time-bound. Thank you. All the best in your communication. And Salim, thanks for the question. Bye for now.